Gillian Keegan. Ms Keegan, always great to see you. Do hope you're well. Just apologies, we can't be in the same studio during this festive week. Let's start with a personal admission from all of us. It's not feeling very, very Christmassy this week, is it? But the Prime Minister has said that we will still be allowed to go with our Christmas parties. On what basis has he come to that decision?
Well, on the basis that, you know, we're taking sort of balanced and proportionate approach to it, and, you know, people can still go ahead and have their Christmas. I would disagree, actually. I had a family meal yesterday, and it did feel very Christmassy, particularly as my sister made it over from the States. So, yeah, it's feeling Christmassy. Families are getting together, sometime for the first time in nearly 3 years.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just playing into the stereotype of the Scottish curmudgeon this morning. But let's talk about the data.
I think you are.
Let's talk about the data, though. Do we have a figure for how many people are in hospital at the moment with Omicron?
Yeah, there's 129 people in hospital with Omicron right now.
The reason I ask, and I'm sure you will be aware of this, on the daily brief, the daily update, the Omicron update, it did suggest that there were some issues around IT reporting. Those issues have now been dealt with.
Well, look, we're getting data from all across the country, from every hospital, which is being fed up on a daily and sometimes hourly basis. So, you know, there's obviously some lags in certain bits of the data, but that's the data that we're collecting. 129 people as of yesterday, and 14 deaths with Omicron.
Just in terms, though, of what is happening, do you feel like we are approaching the peak of Omicron, or perhaps have even peaked? But Paul Hunter from the University of East Anglia suggesting that numbers may have plateaued. We would have been expecting, perhaps, if we go on the growth rate from 2 weeks ago, perhaps 200,000 cases a day. Instead, we're reporting around about 90,000.
No, we haven't been given that information. We're watching the data very, very carefully. I mean, you had 3 meetings yesterday where we're all discussing the data and taking in those inputs. So we don't know that yet, but we are looking at the wave and we're looking at all the data, and we'll tell you when we think we've passed peak.
So we haven't yet seen a major rise in hospitalisations if we generalise across the country, but there is an expectation that one is coming, though, isn't there?
Well, you know, the things that are unknown, which I think we've said a number of times that they're still working on, is the severity of the disease and also the impact of the vaccination, and now, more importantly, the vaccination plus the booster. We know the booster gives a huge increase in defence, which is why we're urging everybody, and thank you so much to the nearly 30 million people who've come forward. But for everybody else, if you haven't had your first dose, it really is never too late. Come forward, start to get yourself and others around you protected.
Just in terms, though, of the negotiations, it feels like there are negotiations going on around the Cabinet table. Your boss, Sajid Javid, none other than the Health Secretary, understood to have been in favour of bringing in restrictions earlier. He told his colleagues that doing nothing is an active decision, but he was outvoted. Do you think he was correct to be outvoted around that table?
Look, you know, around the Cabinet table, obviously you've got to get everybody with the different views, looking from a different perspective. One will look from health, one will look from the economy, one will look from transport, etc. So that's why you have a Cabinet government, so you can get all of that diversity of views and then take a balanced approach to risk. And it is a difficult decision. We do not have all the information that you would like to have at your fingertips, in particular, as you were talking about earlier, the severity of the disease. So it is a difficult balance, but we think we've got the balance right. You know, saying to the country we wanted to lock down, etc., when you've got those kind of figures, wouldn't look proportionate. So we're trying to be balanced, we're trying to be proportionate, but most importantly, we are monitoring the data on a daily basis. A couple of times a day, actually, we get new inputs of data, and that's what we'll continue to do. We'll be working all over Christmas, and we'll continue to do that.
So was the First Minister of Scotland wrong to go further than the Prime Minister then? Does she know something that he doesn't? I thought they were working from the same data set.
They are, and they have been all the way through the pandemic, but obviously the devolved administrations have taken different approaches at times, and you know that's their you know, their authority to be able to do that. You know, people look at the data. The data is no different, but I guess the way they analyse the risk could be different, or they look at their population. You know, we've taken a look at it, and we've basically said, you know, the hospitalisations, the deaths, where we are right now, as you said, the rise in cases, whilst the case numbers are very high, you know, they haven't yet reached what was estimated only a week ago.
Sure, but just in terms of further restrictions, It is fair, isn't it, to say that it is a question of when and not if?
Well, obviously, we've said we have to keep that option open because, we are looking at cases that are going up at the moment, and we are looking at hospitalisation, which is going up. I was on the programme last week and it was 10 then, now it's 129. So obviously we do have to reserve that option, and we won't hesitate. We've said that we will not hesitate if it's required to keep people safe. But right now, the balanced and proportionate response is, we believe, the one that we've put in place.
Big announcement in terms of isolation. For those that are fully vaccinated, at the very least, the self-isolation period to be cut from 10 days to 7. What is the science behind that? Why are we now confident that people can be out, mixing in the community again at day 7 rather than day 10?
Well, what we've done is looked at whether serial testing on day 6 and day 7, how that the risk of that versus waiting till day 10. And effectively, they've said it's equivalent risk if you have day 6 and day 7 negative test is equivalent risk to having another 3 days in your bedroom or whatever.
But you are asking people who do leave their homes on day 7, having had those 2 lateral flow tests, you are asking them to minimise social contact, you're asking them to avoid mixing if at all possible. Why is that necessary if it's safe for them to leave the house on day 7?
We're saying that for everybody. We're saying to everybody, look, be cautious if you're going somewhere. I mean, we had a family meal yesterday. Everyone took a lateral flow test before. Make sure you go to somewhere that's well ventilated. Be cautious. We're saying that to everybody. There's a lot of unknowns here. We still, don't have all the data that we want. So be cautious. Be cautious to enjoy your Christmas.
As much as anything else, is this perhaps a means by which we can help out the really significant staffing pressures that there are in the health service at the moment? I mean, the BMA estimating between 32,000 and 130,000 could be off work by Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, keeping the economy going, keeping the supply chains going, keeping the NHS going, keeping yourself going. Everybody who's involved in jobs right now, for sure, that is part of looking at whether people can, with the equivalent risk, can get back to work earlier. So, yes, that is part of the equation.
A big package announced by the Chancellor yesterday, £1 billion to go to the hospitality sector, £6,000 for every individual business. Isn't that a little bit like trying to fight third world famine with a packet of frozen peas? I mean, I spoke to one venue owner yesterday who said their daily takings at this time of year are close to £6,000.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, what we're not doing is looking to try and, compensate all of that. What we're looking to do is to provide a security blanket for businesses, like we did all the way through the pandemic. I mean, we've spent £407 billion on businesses and business support. So, we're just trying to do that for this period of time. We know it's really unfortunate, obviously hitting just before Christmas. It is really unfortunate. So to provide that lifeline, and hopefully once we can all get back out, the great British public will do what they do and they'll support all of these businesses and get back to the theatres and get back to restaurants.
Sure, but you described it as a security blanket. If it is such, it is pretty threadbare. I mean, Tim Rumney, Chief Executive of Best Western, he says it's just so disappointing and underwhelming in every sense. It doesn't go far enough opinion, it doesn't go deep enough, and it's too little too late. I mean, why have we not reintroduced furlough?
Well, because people are still working. I mean, I went out for a family meal yesterday. There was the pub was, not every table was full, but most of it was. People are still going out and people are still enjoying themselves. So, we're trying to get that balance again. But actually, most businesses I've spoken to are actually very appreciative of this support. So obviously you found one there that doesn't think it's enough. You'll always find that. But, this is £1 billion that we have just announced, and it is there to support businesses across our country, hopefully for a short period of time, until we can, get over this latest variant and the wave of disruption that it's caused.
But just in terms of wages, because that clearly has been something that many in the industry have been calling out for assistance. The move on statutory sick pay helps the firms, but it doesn't help the 1 in 6 hospitality workers, perhaps as many as 240,000 people who don't qualify for it.
Well, I mean, it's there, again, for those smaller firms to make sure that people can self-isolate for up to 2 weeks. The government will pay. And, you know, it's been very welcomed, I think, from most of the businesses that I've spoken to and from what I've heard as well. You know, this is something, again, we're dealing with uncertainty. We've responded really quickly to this latest uncertainty. We hope it doesn't last too long, but that is, you know, £1 billion that's been announced, and it is not something that should be dismissed. It's something that I think largely is welcomed.
Minister, let's return to the top of our interview, where I, self-described myself as a bit of a grumpy Scot. Perhaps you can lift my mood. I mean, in your mind, on the basis of the limits that people are already putting on their own activity, as you mentioned, you were in a restaurant yesterday and not all the tables were used. In your mind, if we carry on this path and people keep doing what they are doing, is there any chance whatsoever that we might not see that circuit breaker lockdown that, frankly, everyone is predicting?
Again, as I've said, we're waiting for data on the severity. We'll still have to wait to see, where we land on that. But we can't really say. All we've said is up to Christmas, we're fine, looking at the data, looking at the numbers we have at the moment. But, of course, we have to look at where this virus goes, where this variant goes. So we have to look at that data. I can't tell you in advance of getting that data. But you should be cheerful, because we're doing a lot more than we could last year. We're able to see our family. As I said, I have my sister and her family over from the States. We haven't seen them for nearly 3 years. So lots of people are getting to see family members that they haven't seen for a long time. And lots of us will get together with our loved ones at Christmas.
Gillian Keegan, lovely to have you on the programme, and you make sure you have a lovely Christmas when it comes.
You too. Happy Christmas and cheer up.
Never. Now, Israel.